All right, so the year 2021 began with lots of expectations as the economy embarked on a recovery mission following a serious battering from the COVID-19 pandemic. So nearly 12 months down the line, some businesses closed shop. A few managed to move on or stay afloat, while others are still struggling to get there. On the show this afternoon, we want to review the year 2021, the hits and the misses, and of course the opportunities that lie ahead in the coming year, which is an election year. Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Okwara-Matole, and this is Business Now, the highlights. As 2021 comes to a close, what are the lessons for businesses going forward? Christmas and New Year holidays are just around the corner, but are consumers empowered financially? We also look ahead at opportunities and challenges that lie in 2022. All right, so we have a great show lined up for you today, and we'll be getting to that in just a moment. But first, take a look at the guests I have for you on the show today. When we're taking a look at 2021, Patricia Okello is the founder for Circles for Women in Business and is also the co-founder for Kayana Create. She will be speaking to us about that and much more, including Victor Otieno, VIFA Consult. We're taking a look at some of the surveys they have put out on what consumers are expecting and indeed how you as a business can tailor yourself towards what the consumers are able to spend this festive season, even as we look forward to the year 2022. Can you believe it? 2021 is almost coming to a close. Please do send in your views. The hashtag is Business Now, and you can tweet me at Yvonne Okwara and at Citizen TV Kenya. We're looking forward to your views on this in a moment. But before we get into the show, as we do here on the program every single Monday, let's take a look at some of the stories that are making headlines this afternoon. And we would like to begin with an update on the Kenya DRC Trade Mission 2021 that has officially been launched in Kinshasa. The governments of Kenya and DRC, in partnership with Equity Group, have organized a 15-day business networking initiative. Over 253 Kenyan investors, entrepreneurs, and business representatives are in DRC for that trade mission. Elsewhere, Harambee Investment Cooperative Society has issued the first batch of title deeds to 100 members in Kantafu along Kangundo Road, Machakos County. The chairperson, MacLeod Malonza, says the society's mission is to see every member become a land and home owner. And finally, Stanbic Bank Kenya has released its 2020 report to society. The report highlights the bank's contribution to driving the country's economic growth in 7 key areas, which include education, job creation, and enterprise development. Great, so it's time to get the show started. Like we said, my guest this afternoon, one who's no stranger and one who we hope we can keep on the show for quite some time to come. Victor Otieno, who's the CEO of VIFA Consult. Thank you for joining us. And Patricia Okello, it's your first time on the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It's a good thing to have you here. So let's begin by talking about, I think, Victor, what 2021 has been like. So we know a majority of the small businesses are in retail. So speak to us about, your overall assessment of what 2021 has been like.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yvonne. I think for starters is, of course, we can reference our last survey that we did, which takes stock of the entire year in terms of performance of SMEs. And what is striking is, of course, as you mentioned rightly, a majority are informal, a majority are in wholesale retail. And of course, we know that for a majority of the year, we were under, some lockdown of sorts, which had an adverse effect on revenue. So which we can see this from our study that over 58% of businesses posted negative revenue. So if you're to compare 2020, 2021. So it's been very bleak, but at least hopefully as we went towards the last quarter, we saw the reopening of the economy, and there is some optimism that even as the economy is being reopened, that we should be able to see a bit of business coming through to the SME space.
Yeah, and when we come back, we'll talk about how much spending power the consumers have.
Exactly.
Even as the restrictions have been eased, and to see what happens with that and what sort of opportunities are there, for the next, was it the last 3 weeks of the year. Patricia, what has it been like for women in business?
Wow, women in business, it's been tough. We know a lot of people are now working from home, and of course the burden of the work that is required even in the domestic space is still there. So you still have to look after your children who are away from school, and some are still offer them sustenance. For those who are employed, they still had to work online, and for those who were going to a market or going to a market space, that was now suspended, and looking for alternative revenue sources and ways in which you can fulfill your domestic budget was a problem. So it was indeed a challenge for women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and just to talk about that a little bit more. So a lot of work was moving away from the office, or even away from the business and moving home. And considering the double role that women play, I can imagine balancing both within the same space must have been difficult somewhat.
Yeah. So a lot of women were working the full 24 hours, like literally, because you have to be present there for your children, as well as being able to prepare your goods and services for the market. So you found working hours were much longer, and of course a lot of women were working extended hours, or going to the workplace. For those of them who had to leave home to go to the market, they had to go with their children. So it was tough, and of course we know that many marketplaces were actually closed down, so the business came home, and difficult. So a lot of children also working within the business as well.
Yeah, that's true. And what are the challenges? Because I know you meet women on a regular basis. Were you able to do that over 2021, considering the restrictions that were there, and when you finally got to do it, what are the challenges are the people who are running businesses telling you?
Yeah, I think we were caught with, of course, like deers in headlights. Yeah. So initially, for the first couple of weeks, you don't really know what to do or what interventions to provide for women. But as entrepreneurs, we're about solving problems, and we quickly came up with other means of engaging them, including offline. So a lot of our entrepreneurs are within WhatsApp groups, and trying to engage them and encourage them, to forge forward. So our community, Circles Women in Business and Kayana, is really about nurturing the entrepreneur. So we do have to have contact with the entrepreneurs themselves. So we took that opportunity to speak with them. We worked a lot with VIFA as well in doing some research and finding out what's happening within the space, what is actually happening within the space. And as it began to open up towards the end of the year, we then resumed a lot of our online interventions.
And then, we've seen economic stimulus that has been launched by the President, 1, 2, and now 3, that was launched on the 20th of October in the President's speech. To what extent have these helped? And I would ask that you pack aside the credit guarantee scheme for a moment. We'll come to that, because that one I think is a whole other story that I want us to get into. But with the stimulus plans that have been put in place, government responding quickly, was it enough? What was the uptake like?
Yeah, I agree. Of course, the government had, anticipated the needs of private sector in general, and they put up 3 interventions in terms of economic stimulus. So I think the challenge that we have is a challenge of product market fit, in the sense that if you're to look at how SMEs are structured, we know that 79% are informal, 90% are micro, they're quite small. Vis-a-vis the intervention, we see that the intervention goes to a majority, to 2 million out of 7 million in terms of total MSME population. So the stimulus program might have worked within the 20% of MSMEs, leaving out a majority not being able to access, that kind of intervention. And it's very easy. If you are to ask, your typical mama mboga, did you feel VAT? Did you feel pay as you earn? Did you feel corporate tax or turnover tax, etc.? So there is still a challenge in terms of product market fit of the stimulus program. And I think maybe we still have a chance to really understand who SMEs are in terms of their informality. And we've seen MSIA, the Micro Small Enterprise Authority, try to create a register for MSC associations.
Yeah.
So that's one step towards understanding the MSC space. Then once you're able to understand, then maybe probably you can be able to give an improved stimulus program towards the micro businesses.
Yeah. Do you get a sense that there's a constant push towards formality of businesses, and that therefore the stimulus packages and any sort of intervention is geared towards the formal sector of the MSME as opposed to the informal, and therefore many of them then lose out or have to start to spend money and resources they don't have to formalize in order to benefit from the stimulus packages?
I mean, we can't deal with amorphous bodies. That's the reality. So a lot of businesses do have to formalize their processes, and we encourage them to do so. What it is you don't need to do everything at the same time. You can just start with initially just going and registering your business at a Huduma Center, which is in all the 42 counties. So you can already just start with that on its own. And I feel that formalization, especially for women-owned business, gives them a sense of taking their business now more seriously.
Okay.
So whatever funds that you're receiving now, you slowly begin to account for them, because now this business is actually registered. So we encourage our businesses to do that, because you will not be able to access these interventions if you're an informal body. So that's part of what we do.
Yeah.
I wanted to interject around the issue of informality.
Yeah.
If you are to talk to someone in Kamkunji or Jericho or whatever, they don't see themselves as a business. They don't see themselves as an SME. They are trying to survive. They are maybe an artisan who makes boxes or Shona's clothes for the sake of surviving. So for them, the immediate need is the conversation of formalization is not within their purview. Yeah, so for them it's a labor issue. Yeah, so I'm just trying to survive. So if you bring in the concept of formalization, it becomes a very difficult conversation to have. And I think one of the highlights which I've seen in terms of intervention from government is to realize that we are very unique in terms of the MSME space. What happens is this artisan would come up and team up with someone selling burger and form an association. So literally they're already formalized, because they already recognized, they're already in a register. So you don't have to formalize in the form of a business for us to call it formalization.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, how do you then target these businesses that are not formal? How does government find them? Where do you meet them? And then how do you ensure that they are benefiting from a lot of the interventions that you have in place?
Yeah. And I keep on saying, when we talk about formalization, we look at formalization from the perspective of a registered company or a single business permit. So if you are to look at the way, and this goes back to 1972 when ILO had the first report around the informal sector, is they're already organized, they're already formalized. It's not in the sense of a corporate or a company. They are already formalized in associations. That association is a registered entity. So you just need to understand, okay, we are in an association. What kind of businesses are here? What kind of help do you need? Then automatically, as a byproduct of them growing naturally, formalization in the sense of what we see becomes a byproduct.
So something like Circles for Women in Business, for instance.
Joining associations like Circles for Women in Business, even within the cottage industry, we're encouraging entrepreneurs to form associations under that and register. So there has to be that move to be part of that association, be it even paying a nominal fee in terms of membership, because it has to come from the entrepreneur as well. Otherwise, you'll find yourself following people who are not really interested in growing their businesses, and you have to protect yourself from that. So we start in Circles for Women in Business. You don't really have to have a formal business, but we still bring you in to support you in terms of conversations and in things that you're hoping to do. As we grow with you and we work with you and we realize now you're now ready to take it to the next step, is when we take you through our capacity building programs, and then hopefully at the end of the day we form some form of registration, whether it's joining an association, as Victor is saying, or registering your business formally. And you'll find that some of these businesses are already they're really ready. It's more of just fear and confidence that women require in order for them to say, okay, fine, this is it, I'm going to do it.
Go to the next step.
To go to the next step. Yeah.
Okay. So we also saw the suspension of CRB listing. That happened last year, and then again, we saw it happen this year. What has it been like in terms of access to credit, Patricia?
That's a whole conversation for another day, because we will need. I
know usually it's difficult. So in a pandemic year, it must have been something else.
Yeah, and especially access to credit for women and women businesses is really. I mean, that's a whole different topic.
Tell us why.
Yeah, well, mainly because women don't own assets, and the reason why the banks are giving you money is against some form of collateral. But if we don't own the collateral, then it becomes a complete challenge out there. So we've seen with the CRB listing, I think it was initially intended to be a good thing, but at the end of the day, it is going to just move banks back to their traditional methods of asking us for that collateral, be it land or a vehicle, or for those who are buying machinery as the collateral. So it's almost taking women backwards in many ways. And then if you look at data, and the banks do have this data, women are savers. They don't spend money frivolously, so they can use another system of ensuring that entrepreneurs will repay back their loans, including education, and using their cash savings as well for that, for those who are saved and have been encouraged to save, rather than going back to that collateral that is required in order to extend credit.
But now that I have you here, Patricia, look, all banks are launching products tailored, to women in business. I mean, like literally, all of them say we have this product and it's, it's built and tailored around women in business. What's the gap? Is it uptake? Or is it still the same? Where's the challenge?
There's definitely uptake in terms of the internal structures in these institutions are not yet geared towards, are not gender friendly, or are not, they don't really have a gender lens. But some of the banks have made an effort in terms of the relational conversations, and that women really love when they go into financial institutions, so they're made to feel welcome. But ultimately, at the back of it is the structure. You have to fill the same form that somebody else, that your male counterpart has to fill. That hasn't changed, and I can tell you that because I take these facilities all the time.
Right.
It hasn't changed. So that's where the real challenge is. Yeah. So you'll get the low-hanging fruit where you'll get your maybe 200K, your 300K, but sometimes the impact you need in your business is a much larger amount, and you'll be lumped back with the original. It still has to go to the accredit, people who are mainly male and may not understand the unique offerings in terms of women on businesses. So the uptake will continue to be low. I was looking at some data for an intervention that came in just at the beginning during COVID, and there was a lot of default when it came to women. So maybe there was a lack of understanding that this was not a grant, that it was actually money that was required to be paid back.
Yeah, and I saw you smiling, Victor.
Yeah, so I think the issue around access to credit is something that has been there since time immemorial.
Yeah.
Of course, you can look at either from the lens of women, you can look at it from the lens of youth, etc. But I think for me, the conversation around access to finance has to go beyond financial institutions, because they're not the only players who can be able to give access to finance. I'm glad that now, the Digital Lender Association of Kenya and the different players within the space are now, being given a fair play. They have a framework of sorts that allows them to be able to play, more confidently within the space. And we've seen this, throughout, I think, the last 5 years in terms of financial access. Mobile credit is growing at an incremental rate over the last, I think, 5 years. Unless the only outlier was last year when they were barred from accessing the credit CRB,
yes.
Which of course had a knock-on effect in terms of how they're able to lend.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you're to, I know you said we should not talk about the credit guarantee scheme. I felt that the digital lenders would be a better fit in terms of being able to give access to credit if they were to leverage on the credit guarantee scheme, because their model already allows for them to give to Mama Mboga. They're already lending to them, so we just need to give them an extra kick for them to be able to scale that up.
Okay.
But
very quickly, because I want to take a break.
Victor, that the cost of that money is just way too high for these. I mean, there has to be something around that. Yeah,
I agree in terms of cost, but at least they're giving access. The reason why there is a huge uptake is because banks were not giving at all. So any person who is able to give, then I'm able to take. I agree. I think the issues around cost, issue around how the money is paid back, we can be able to address. But it's a sector.
So what you're saying is that the money is there. Yes. And you've had a good segue, so we'll talk a little bit more about that credit guarantee scheme and its uptake, which was, supposed to be something really interesting, where essentially the government acts as a guarantor for loans that you can get from private institutions. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about good tidings, perhaps, for the festive season, and looking ahead to 2022. This is Business Now. We are taking a look at a review of what the year 2021 has been like. We have much more when we return. Welcome back. The conversation continues. 2021 Business Review. What has business been like for you for this year, and what are your hopes for next year? So a couple of things. Obviously, Omicron variant aside, we are really celebrating the easing of restrictions and hoping that everything that the scientists are telling us in terms of severity of the disease, is something that will hold as the scientists continue to tell us more. But then guess what? We're going into an election year in 2022, but we'll come back to that in a moment and still talk about what we had touched on a little bit. That's the credit guarantee scheme. How many times have we discussed this on Business Now in the last year? Quite a bit. How many of you know that the government is able to actually give you part guarantee for a loan for your business when you go to a private lender? How many people know about the credit guarantee scheme? Because the uptake, well, it was about 5 billion shillings that, that sort of set aside for this facility. And the uptake has been way less than half. In fact, it's about 200 million, that has been taken up through this scheme. And that, Victor, they say, is usually the biggest thing. But, Patricia, I'll ask you about this. How many of the businesses that are in circles for women know about it, besides taking it up?
Honestly speaking, I have not had any idea of anybody who's taken it. And our work at Circles for Women in Business and in Kayana is around disseminating this information to the entrepreneurs. So I would definitely have a feel if there are more than 4,000, 5,000 women within Kayana and 12,000 in the wider community would have received it. So I think that's the biggest thing is, okay, other than the aversion to credit for women, there's also the fact that they actually don't know that this facility exists. Yeah,
and yet this is, to help shore up businesses, particularly during the COVID times, Victor.
Yeah, I agree. I think the background around the credit guarantee scheme, of course, was an improvement to the development funds that we previously had. Your women fund, your youth fund, of course, which was supposed to cater for women. But there was some systemic failure around the same in terms of the way it was structured. Yes, it was a development fund, but when it came to actual disbursement, they would still rely on the old models of giving loans, either based on some form of security. So the credit guarantee scheme was an improvement to that, and I think it's still a brilliant idea in terms of being able to, guarantee loans to small businesses. But I think we still have challenges with it. Number one, of course, if you were to look at the cost benefit of this guarantee scheme from a bank point of view, is maybe there's no incentive enough for them to be able to consider it and start pushing loans through the guarantee scheme. Maybe it's a point in time we need to consider other players. Let's say, for example, your digital lenders, that because they already have a model that is reaching out to the informal sector and small businesses, then maybe it can be a shot in the arm in terms of giving it more uptake. I think maybe that could be an option. The other option is, of course, is aggressive communication around what it is. Again, if you look at a majority of small businesses, most of them are so much into their business, like Pat was saying, like someone is working 24 hours.
That's right.
What time do they have to look at a TV and see this scheme? So maybe a change of model or an aggressive communication of this product is out there. Can you be able to take it up?
Yeah, so some greater outreach, with respect to that. And when you talk about digital lending, that's definitely something that's discreet. That's number one. So for anyone who's perhaps there's no collateral, we know about the other mischievous ways. However, I am informed that women particularly, and even Mamambogas, use this very well. So you'd be able to borrow tonight, buy your product. By tomorrow morning, once you've sold it at the market, you're able to pay the loan back in a 24-hour period or something like that. And we're seeing a lot of, more aggressive moves with them, that they're even starting to give grants, apparently, that we're seeing from the digital lenders. So let me ask you, what does the festive season look like, for you? Is it looking up? Is it...
Well, I think for small and micro businesses within our network, especially, one of the things that we really pushed through during the COVID season was getting more access to market for products for our entrepreneurs. And of course, the Christmas season gives the opportunity for more spending, technically. Victor, you'll give us the details on that.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is trying to target more corporates to consciously purchase from small and micro businesses to keep their lights on and, to keep them going, to make up for the season when they lost, a lot of revenue during the lockdown. So that's a big push in terms of advocacy to go to corporates who are already in the feeling of gifting during this season, but be more conscious in the gifts that you're purchasing and support small and micro businesses that are doing that micro manufacturing within the country, not just traders that are importing. And we're really pushing that and educating the corporates on how the impact of that on small businesses.
Yeah.
So that's been the good thing. And I feel that corporates are beginning to spend more. A lot of their employees are returning back to work, so they're sending them care packs, and they're having events for them, just to encourage the employees to come back, to the office and, and welcoming them. And it's a perfect occasion for you to then purchase from small and micro businesses in that regard. So we're seeing quite a bit. Actually, we're quite busy with that right now.
Oh, okay. That's really good. So Patricia, targeting, corporates. But what is it like for individuals, Victor? How much are we willing to spend? I know we've run this story before, but run us through how much disposable income, consumers have to spend this season. Yeah,
so we've run our second edition retail survey. And the objective of the survey is to just find out, the spending patterns of individuals as we go towards the festive season. Of course, we are based on COVID, the negative effect of COVID, which had a knock-on effect on corporates, where a lot of people are employed, as well as MSME, who are also a source of employment. We're currently employing around 15 million Kenyans. So with restriction, it meant that either people were either on half pay or businesses closed down. So the knock-on effect, the aggregate of that, is that disposable income of a majority of Kenyans went low. Remember, a majority of Kenyans earn salaries of less than 100,000, around 70%. So if you were to aggregate that with COVID, then it meant that, and of course, looking at the way education, has been restructured, the terms are very short. So guys were, looking at, specifically under this survey, we are looking at December, guys who are like, around 15% were saying, number one is the economy has been very tough. And a majority was saying, over 50% were saying they're going to spend less than 30,000 shillings over the entire festive season. Why? Is because, number one, disposable income has gone down. Number two is they're still staring at school fees in January. So a majority were, even if they were to spend, they were to spend on very essential things, food stuff, clothing, things, a bit of travel, but it's very conservative, in the sense that if you were to look at, of course, disposable income and the way the economy, things are tight, yes, they would spend, but it's spending very sporadic, very carefully on very essential things.
And considering, so typically every year anyway, there would be school fees in January. But this has been an extraordinary year. How many times have parents paid school fees? 4 times. This year already. So obviously that's at the back of their minds. So knowing what we know now from that survey, what do small businesses do to enable them to benefit from even that reduced spending? I'll start with you, then I'll come to you, Patricia. Victor.
So I think, of course, from an SME perspective, that it's been quite difficult. I think for me is if you are able to be very creative, at least in the sense that can you be able to give some form of credit, so that maybe you can purchase and pay later, so that at least you have that as a sale, rather than having no sale at all. I think that's a small window that a majority can have. And I'm sure if you go to any estate, there's always a shop there where you can have a book where you can literally write, the things that you've been able to buy, and you can be able to pay later. So I think maybe it's very tough. Of course, cash flow is very critical, but I think small businesses have to find creative ways of being able to get revenue. If you can be able to bundle your products, the better. Bundling basically means taking your Blue Band as with something else and giving it at a discount. Just trying to find innovative ways of being able to make you make your next sale.
Patricia?
I have to agree with Victor, and bundling is really great, actually, even for the small and micro businesses with complementary products. And then I think value add, especially for around agricultural products, as a lot is being spoken about, post harvest waste, etc. So you can value add in terms of your products, and they can get a longer shelf life. I think that would be really great. And I have to speak back to the corporates again. The reason why we're promoting and these small and micro businesses, as Victor has said, 70% of the businesses of individuals are earning less than 100K, and of that percentage, a large number is employed by the small businesses, actually not corporate, small businesses.
Yes.
So by the corporates supporting the small businesses, they're actually, the money is really coming back into the economy in terms of spending power, etc. So I would say definitely those are some of the things that we offer our entrepreneurs around value add. I don't know about credit, but I think that's actually excellent. And it's difficult for small businesses to understand that, especially with the corporates, that you have to give products and hopefully get them paid. And we're trying to reduce the period from 30 days to 15 days in order for them to get paid. But it's a big deal. I mean, offering things on credit and understanding your stock and revenue and inventory is really, really important for the small businesses.
And you're right. I just want to read a tweet here from Ronnie Reagan, who says, people lost their jobs. Those who remained had their salaries slashed by half. Many businesses closed. Uchumi umeharibika kabisa, yani ni kubaya. I don't even know how this Christmas will look like. Parents are paying school fees every month. It really just does literally feel that way. So, and yet businesses have to stay afloat. And, we are hoping that these same people will, patronize some of these businesses and purchase some of their products as we take a look at that. So hopefully there might be a bump in the month of December. But then let's look ahead to 2022. I mean, and I have to add a caveat here that if COVID-19 has taught us nothing else, it is that you cannot now, start to make projections for who's making projections for a year from now, 2 years from now, medium term and long term. But any thoughts as to what happens in 2022? We'll still be battling COVID, no doubt. We're also going into an election season. Campaigns will be heightened. Perhaps there'll be more money flowing into the economy because we know, what happens on the end of politics. But then we also, see a lot of people more conservative. No spending, no new projects, no new, initiatives because, wait and see. Victor, so what happens in 2022 and how can businesses try as much as possible to position themselves or mitigate what might be coming?
So I think there is some optimism as we go towards 2022, partly because of course, the reopening of the economy. I think based on aspirations, based on the study that we did, is a majority of MSMEs are saying that they hope that the political environment can be stable. Of course, it can because of the nature of our politics. There is going to be a lot of activities, but if we're able to get a stable environment, no violence, then probably we can be able to salvage in terms of get some revenue. I think there are opportunities within the ESC community, as you've seen, the partnership between Equity and the Ministry of Industry, taking traders to DRC. There is also one that is happening in Mwanza in Tanzania. So there are opportunities that SMEs can be able to plug into Kayana and the rest who are trying to look for markets for small businesses. So the sooner MSMEs are able to plug into some of these spaces, we have Keproba that is also looking for market opportunities. So I think entrepreneurs need to be aware that yes, we can bash government, but also there are opportunities that government is creating that you can be able to plug into. I think those can be very great opportunities. We have the FTA, the Continental Free Trade Area. It's of course it's very big, it's amorphous, but finding ways of plugging into those spaces could be something of interest to a lot of businesses. Number two is there is this shift or dependence on wholesale retail. I think that COVID has taught us that this needs to change. So a lot of businesses that were highly affected with COVID and other systemic challenges or knock-on effects to their business were people who are in wholesale retail. I think moving towards agriculture, agribusiness, value addition, manufacturing would be a more sustainable way of running your business other than wholesale retail. Lastly is aggregation. So what happens in Kenya is, like I mentioned, is 90% of our businesses are micro. So it means that you can't enjoy economies of scale. If you're able to aggregate your business either under an association or form a larger entity, you stand a better chance of being able to enjoy economies of scale, access markets, etc. So I think for me, those are areas that entrepreneurs need to watch out to, just to be able to build their own resilience.
Patricia?
Yeah, I agree with what Victor has said. I just want to add on. For small and micro businesses, online trading is actually a huge thing. And I think that's what COVID has taught us. If you're going to go back into your homes to manufacture products, then you have to get them to market. And I think using livelihood platforms for that is something that I think more and more businesses need to embrace, to get product to market. Another thing is, traditionally we have known our election this year is falling in the middle of the year. So therefore there'll be bulk spending and all the activities are going to happen in the first half of the year. And I think businesses need to prepare themselves for that, be ready, to take advantage of the fact that a lot of people will be spending money in the first half of the year, and that they will, and the second, as opposed to the second half. Of course, if the elections go well, it's great. Then there'll be optimism in the market, and then you'll take advantage of that. So that's something that businesses need to prepare themselves for, understanding that even as a business, just as we're asked as individuals to save money, even businesses actually need to adapt a saving culture within their organization, regardless of how much they're turning over, because that's the thing that will tide us through to the second half of the year.
Okay, all right. And so, you mentioned some important things like online, the online market and taking advantage of that space, and so important to also just take advantage of the increased spending that we will see in the first half of the year. Talking about taking businesses perhaps outside our borders, I know for SMEs, it's here, and it's in our locality, but, many organizations say the internationalization of SMEs is the one thing. And I know it sounds grand, but it simply is saying, look, what other markets exist outside this one geographical border? How possible is that for SMEs, and, what would they need to do? And could that be something that we say we're taking a look at, so that, if you are making body butters, for instance, or you have your little cottage industry, and how do you actually start to exploit other markets beyond Kenya's borders? Yeah,
in fact, just this, I think on Friday, I was at a graduation of some small and micro businesses that were graduating, and many of them are exporting raw materials. So things like, as you said, shea butter, but it's in its raw form, and it's being exported to Saudi Arabia. And these are small businesses; they're not huge businesses. So sometimes, in terms of, especially around cosmetics and food, there may be some standards that need to be met for you to export them internationally. But there are also markets ready to receive products in their rawest form. And I think it's for the entrepreneurs to do their research. Of course, a lot of these things will be around aggregation as well, and education, aggregation and education, because even if you're getting things from small businesses or small farmers, for example, on the ground, there needs to be some education in the way the materials need to be ready in order for them to be export ready. But certainly, first of all, in many of these products, even the local market is not satisfied.
Yes.
But of course, in a time we're going into an election year, it's good to look at external markets to supplement the income that will not be coming in from domestic markets.
Yeah, good. And I think that's a great place to leave it, though. Our time is up, and we thank you both so much for coming and for talking to us and giving some great tips, I think, to many of the businesses out there in terms of what to look out for. So I like that, the saving culture, the way we do it as individuals. Let's start to do that for businesses as well. Online markets, starting to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are there. So what we have said is the challenges are there for 2022, but the opportunities are also as great, and we exploit those. Thank you very much for watching the show today, and always we thank you for being with us. Please do have a great week ahead. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Bye-bye.